And it's an important term to understand because according to your book, looking at Blanchard's reporting, as many as 82% of straight trans people, like men who claim they're women who are not gay, are in fact autogynephiles. So can you explain what that is?
Sure. I'm going to say before I start, though, that I don't care what a man's motivation for coming into women's spaces is. He's not welcome. I don't care if he's very sincere. I don't care if he's not a pervert. I don't care if he's gay or straight. It's a women's space. He is not welcome. As they say, good men
Amen.
Keep out so that we can keep everybody else out. I don't allow my husband, I don't allow my sons into women's spaces, and I expect them to respect women's boundaries. That said, there are different motivations for thinking that you are a member of the opposite sex, both for men and for women. And among men, the two common presentations are, one, that they were very, very effeminate or feminine, or to use the pejorative term, sissy little boys. And the world, maybe their own family, gave them the strong impression that this was not okay, and that a little boy who's like them has something wrong with him and is a girl, really. Now, that kid, if he's supported and nobody lies to him about what's possible, will grow up to understand that he's a gay man and hopefully, be a happy, healthy, fully functioning gay man in adulthood. Unfortunately, we're transing those kids now, so we are taking away their futures from them. But the other group are straight men who have an unusual, whether you think of it as a sexual orientation or a sexual fetish will depend on how you think sex works. But what attracts them and excites them sexually is the idea of themselves as women. That's their fantasy. It's almost as if they're in love with the woman version of themselves. And that's where all these phrases like, I have a woman inside, I am really a woman inside, come from. And it's on a spectrum with erotic cross-dressing, which is a common male sexual interest. Lots of straight men do dress up as women and find it sexy. So some of these men become more and more and more bought into this fantasy to the extent that as they get older, it becomes impossible, or they think it's impossible, to live without acting out that fantasy. And they don't want to just keep the fantasy woman to their bedroom or to their, going away on cross-dressing weekends with other men or whatever it is, or sharing pictures on some cross-dressing website. And now, of course, they can go and say, I'm really a woman. And I actually think that a lot of them think they are really women. Like they've been fantasizing about this woman for so long that she feels very real to them. And now, of course, they're stunning and brave. They're the best women. But what is so unusual and destructive about this sexual desire and urge is that it requires everybody else to play along. That's part of the fantasy. And that's not true of sexual desires in general. Like, I'm a heterosexual woman. I don't need other people to validate that as long as my own husband agrees with me that I'm a heterosexual woman and we stay together. That's it. The rest of the world doesn't have to play along with anything for that. But if you're a man whose deepest sexual desire is that he is really a woman, then that man requires everybody, specifically women, to agree with him. And he doesn't just want to cross-dress, he wants to come into women-only spaces because he wants to be in the place where his womanhood is validated. So that doesn't just mean that he wants to use the women's toilets and the women's changing rooms and so on because that's convenient. It means he wants to use them for validation. He goes into them specifically. So all these men, they go and they join menopause support groups on Facebook.
Oh,
they join women-only swim sessions when actually there's a mixed-sex session as well. They do all these things that only women can do because that's the thing that they get off on. And any woman who says, sorry, mate, you're a man, not welcome, she's striking a blow at the heart of his own self-image and his erotic fantasy as well. And men and their sex drives, it's one of the forces that moves this world is what men want sexually. And these men are very, very motivated. I think of them as the beating nuclear reactor at the heart of this movement. They may not even be numerically the biggest part of this movement. And in fact, the foot soldiers of this movement are the young women who have grown up in queer theory at universities, and they're the worst for parroting that trans women are women. But without this hard core of men whose dearest and sole desire in life is to force everybody to pretend that they're women, this would not have got so far.
This sexual fetish is taking over our world, our little girls' world, all of our spaces. And so to put it in legal terms, we have standing to object And yet it's not recognized by all these institutions that want to sound and look inclusive.
And the worst thing about this, sort of to finish why these people are the toxic beating nuclear reactor at the heart of this movement, is because it's so central to their self-image and so central to their sexual fantasy that they really are women. They don't want you to play along. They don't want you to be like, yeah, whatever, okay, you're basically like a drag queen, I don't care if men wear women's clothes. And so they say that they were always that way, that really inside they're women. And that means they have to have been trans children. It means there have to have been trans children. So these men are the ones who want children put on sterilizing drugs because to validate their sexuality. They're so dangerous.
And we are seeding the debate because we've been shamed by the media, by, as you point out, the main leaders of the movement, the generals, the young women who have been indoctrinated in queer theory in the universities. We're allowing these people to shame us. It's bad enough for us, but it's a totally different matter when we're talking about our children. If you're too afraid to stand up for yourself, you must find a way to stand up to this. Otherwise, our children are not only going to be hurt by these people, some of them, but they're going to be indoctrinated into thinking, and the harm is only going to spread. Right? Helen Joyce stays with us. I want to pick it up.